This is Arthur Robinson Jr. I'm the creator and host of the Powerful Interviews podcast. I'm a partner of NationalDiversified.com. And today I have a special interview for each and every one of you. Today I have a wonderful person on the show, and he's a great friend of mine. His name is Michael Franzese. And for those that don't know Michael, let me explain to each and every one of you about this incredible, phenomenal man. Michael Franzese is a former mob boss for the Colombo Family. He is the best-selling author of his phenomenal book, which is called I'll Make You an Offer You Can't Refuse. And Michael speaks all over the world about building wealth and about how you can actually become a successful entrepreneur. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Michael Franzese to the show.
Well, thank you, Arthur. That was a very powerful introduction. I appreciate that, my friend. Good to be here.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Michael, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the audience worldwide about your phenomenal book, I'll Make You an Offer You Can't Refuse, and about the Colombo Family. I gladly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And we're set and ready to go. I was in New Orleans yesterday, and I know this was scheduled for yesterday, but we had a glitch in our travel plans, so I'm glad you made time for it today. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you and everything that you're doing, and you have a compelling story. To everyone that is listening and watching, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Michael Franzese is going to break down layman's terms about the Colombo Family, and we're going to talk about his phenomenal book, I'll Make You an Offer You Can't Refuse. Is that correct, Michael?
That's it, Arthur. You got it.
What I'd like to know, and can you explain to the audience in layman's terms, who is the phenomenal Michael Franzese? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Well, Arthur, let me start off by saying that, I don't know how phenomenal and powerful I am, but I've certainly been very blessed over the years, to be alive and free and to be here to speak to you. And, I'm a person of great faith, and I thank God for giving me this opportunity and this length in my life. But, aside from that, I grew up in Brooklyn. My dad was a very powerful figure in the organized crime family, in the Colombo family. He was the underboss of that family back in the 60s. So I grew up in that environment. My dad was very high profile, always under investigation. And so I got a taste of the life, early on. Mm-hmm. Originally, I wasn't getting involved, but my dad got in some very serious trouble in the 60s, eventually went to prison for 50 years. Mm-hmm. And at that point in time, Joe Colombo, who was the boss of my family, kind of took me under his wing. I was 20 years old. And through a set of circumstances, my dad proposed me for membership in the life, and I became a member myself in 1975. I took the oath. And, started my, I would say, career in that life. And fortunately, I knew how to use that life to benefit me in business, went on to make a very significant amount of money. In 1980, the boss of my family then, Carmine Persico, appointed me as a captain, capo regime, and, lived that life for the next 15 years. So a total of almost 25 years in that life. And then made a change. I think some of the story, Arthur. I made a change. I met a young girl who's now my wife of 34 years, a young girl of faith, and decided to go a different direction in my life. And I accepted a 10-year prison sentence. I had a $15 million restitution, $5 million in forfeitures from some of the various schemes that I was involved with during that time. Tried to make my peace with the government, did 8 years in prison, 3 of those years in solitary. The government was pretty upset with me, but managed to come out and, kind of change my life around. And that's the thumbnail sketch of my story. And, obviously it's been told in greater detail. I tell it almost every week in various speaking forums that I'm in. And there's books and movies and documentaries and all that about me. So, but hopefully we give your audience that doesn't know me just a little perspective on who I am.
Now, you are a former mob boss of the Colombo Family. Now, in New York City, are there 5 small mafia families and like 9 international mafia families all over the world?
Yeah, I mean, there are 5 families in New York, and quite honestly, in America, it's not really the mafia, it's La Cosa Nostra. There's similar organizations, but just, they have a lot of similarities, but some things are different about them. The mafia exists in Italy, La Cosa Nostra is here in the United States. And really, the power source for the United States is really in New York. Most of the men reside there. There are 5 families. And even though there are 9 families throughout the country, at least there were, things have changed a little bit now, but 9 families that took part in the commission, the mob commission that was created by Luciano way back when. But again, the real seat of power has always been in the United States, in New York.
Now, over the years, you develop a powerful reputation, with the Colombo crime family. And I know that you basically created and built a business avatar with getting involved with legal and illegal businesses. Can you explain to the audience about the businesses that you participated in, and was those businesses profitable for you and the Colombo crime family?
Yes, Arthur. Like I said, I was pretty fortunate in that I knew how to use that life to benefit me in business. And I went on to make a very significant amount of money, both in illegal operations and legal operations. And, just to make things clear up front, I didn't get involved in drugs. In our family, actually in all of New York, we weren't allowed to participate in drugs. If we did, we actually got killed. It was off limits at the time. So drugs weren't involved in this. But, I had a head for business, and I had a number of automobile dealerships. I had a Chevrolet dealership. I had a Mazda dealership. I was involved in various clubs and restaurants in the United States, throughout New York and throughout the country, actually. And, aside from that, I was involved in the film business. I had a production and distribution company. So I had a lot of things going on. And then illegally, I was involved in a major gambling operation. I had a number of bookmakers that worked for me. Bookmakers take bets illegally. And I had, I guess, the most significant scheme I had was that I devised a scheme to defraud the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. And it was something that I created along with a partner, and I recruited a number of the Russian mob guys from Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. And I ran that operation for about 8 years. At the height of my operation, I had over 350 gas stations. I had 18 companies that were licensed to collect tax. You had to be a licensed wholesaler at some point to collect the tax on every gallon of gasoline. At the height of my operation, we were selling 500 million gallons of gas a month and taking down anywhere from 25, 30 to 40 cents a gallon, depending on where we were located. So, we were bringing in, at one point, $5 to $8 to $10 million a week, depending upon the week. And it was an extremely lucrative operation for myself and for the family.
Now, Iraq has the biggest oil reserves in the world. And I know that you was in the gas and oil business. From your own perspective, do you think that entrepreneurs and business owners should get in the gas and oil fields and own those gas and oil fields? Because I know that the oil business is very profitable if you decide to get into that business.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, I was doing it differently because we were actually buying barges of gas from the Middle East. As they came over in their tankers, you deal with different men that, represent them, and you trade, so we were buying and selling these tankers as they were coming over. And actually the ones that actually made it here to the United States, we would put in our storage facilities or other storage facilities that we rented. So, for me, having gas in the ground is like having money in the bank. I mean, it transfers immediately. You sell gas, you get paid immediately, and that's it. So it's lucrative in that regard, but it's lucrative the way I was doing it, to be legitimately in the business. Obviously, it takes a lot of money. And, I know a lot of people in Texas that become very wealthy, throughout that industry. So it's not that I can recommend, if you don't have the ability and the tools and the know-how to get involved in it. I would say that you certainly have to learn all of that first and have the money. If you did it the way I did it at the time, well, you know, it was a shortcut because we didn't need as much money to do it illegally as you did legally. So, but yeah, I mean, gas is money, same thing. And it's one of the biggest commodities that we trade in worldwide. And, you know, wars have been started over gasoline and oil, I should say, not gas. But, you know, for me, it worked out very well. But I also went to prison as a result of it. But it worked out very well. I made a tremendous amount of money, and it kind of formed the basis of my career at some point in time.
Wow. Wow. Now, you basically had, you know, a lavish lifestyle. And I know, you know, with the Colombo crime family, or if you've been dealing with the Mafia family, basically, you know, some people, if you are a boss or underboss, a lot of people face fear. And, you know, fear stands for false evidence appearing real. And, you know, basically it also stands for, you know, false evidence appearing real. And you've been basically traveling all over the world. And, you know, I also like that acronym that, you know, FEAR stands for basically face everything and rise. So you was facing everything and you basically risen to the next level as a former mob boss. From your own perspective, can you break down layman's terms, what was the most important day of your life when you experienced financial freedom?
Well, you know, I don't know if it was one day, Arthur, or just a series of days. You know, I was very aggressive. I mean, I was a hard worker, and I tried to use what tools were available to me to my advantage in business as well as in my life. So I don't know if it was any one day when I realized, hey, I really made it. I mean, look, I had a lot of toys. I mean, I had a jet plane. I had a Lear 25. I had a Bell helicopter at that time. I had a house in Florida on the water in West Palm Beach. I had a house in Marina del Rey, California. I had a 7,000 square foot house in Long Island that I built on 2.5 acres of land. So, I mean, I was living lavish in that regard, and I had 2 automobile dealerships, so I was driving every car that I wanted to drive at that point in time. So, you know, I think it was a cumulative effect, you know, as this money started to come in and I started to feel, you know, obviously very financially independent. But, you know, the flip side of that is I became a major target of law enforcement. I mean, I had, you know, 16 or 17 arrests. I had 7 indictments, 2 federal racketeering cases, a number of state cases. So, I mean, they were hot on my tails, I mean, on a daily basis. So, you know, in that life, you're always kind of walking on the edge when you reach the level that I reached and you had the high profile that I had, whereas you're always trying to defend yourself against the government, make sure you don't make mistakes that'll put you in prison and cause you to lose everything. You're also got to be careful of your own guys on the street because, you know, at times it's a very treacherous life. There's a lot of backstabbing, a lot of stuff that goes on that you have to be aware of. You got to be, you know, acutely sensitive to your surroundings and the people that you're around. And so you're always walking a line. So, you know, did I really ever get a chance to relax and enjoy everything? I would say, yeah, I did. You know, we had a lot of fun with the guys at times, but I was always walking that line, you know, trying to make sure that I can maintain my freedom, I can maintain my life, and I can maintain my assets. So it was a different experience than most people have.
Now, we know that, you know, you basically travel all over the world and you was having a phenomenal time in the 80s and in the 90s. Do you miss that phenomenal lifestyle?
You know, I mean, I would be lying if I said that I didn't miss it at times. I mean, you know, the main thing I miss is this camaraderie I had with the guys. I mean, it was very powerful back then, you know, this brotherhood that we had that, you know, later on you learned was really not real because it was built on, you know, the wrong things, I would say. you know, as opposed to today where I have some real brothers in Christ and I have people that I'm very close with and I have a different relationship with them. But yeah, I mean, look, I miss the lifestyle at times. I mean, you know, when you're riding around in jet planes and you know, going to different homes around the world and having the financial freedom to do what you want. And, you know, you have a certain amount of power that comes with that. You know, you get seated well in restaurants and people cater to you a little bit. So it becomes intoxicating, you know, it really does. And, you know, hopefully it got to me a little less than it got to some people that I saw out there that eventually, you know, took them down. It became destructive at some point, but I tried to maintain, you know, the right attitude towards it. But, you know, you get caught up in it. And at times I miss it. Would I ever go back? Would I ever trade what I have now? No, not in any way, shape or form. But there are times when I think about it and say, wow, you know, we had it going on back then.
Wow. Now, your father, he basically was a soldier and then he became a boss and underboss. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was a soldier captain and then took the position of underboss, and very powerful position in that life. My dad was, had a very high profile, very well respected on the street. And, you know, I think people know what happened to him, and he ended up, you know, going to jail for 50 years. And that kind of, you know, destroyed anything that he had going on the street.
Wow. Now, you basically try to get your father out of incarceration. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I was a young kid, I mean, that's what caused me to go into the life. I mean, my dad professed his innocence. He said, Mike, you know, he was allegedly masterminded a nationwide string of bank robberies. And, he told me early on that he was innocent of that crime. He's not a bank robber. He didn't deal with the people that actually robbed the banks, which were all drug addicts. My dad would never deal with drug addicts. He hated drugs. So I knew he was innocent. And I said, hey, Dad, if I don't do something to help you out, you're going to die in here. 50-year sentence is a lifetime sentence. So, you know, that's when I changed directions and got involved in the life, really as a tool to try to help my dad get out of prison. I did get him out after 10 years. You know, we worked hard and we got him out on parole after 10 years. He kept violating and going back. And eventually on the 50, he did almost 40. So he did all of his time, you know, with good time. So, you know, it was terrible for him. It was, it basically destroyed what he had of his life, and certainly destroyed a lot of our family life as a result of what happened to him. But, you know, very sad situation, Arthur. It's the only way I can describe it.
Wow. Now, when you were actually, you know, coming up, you know, 5, 10, you know, 15 years old, did your father develop, you know, a strict work ethic? Was he a strict dad? Was he, you know, basically, you know, go along with it, get along dad? You know, was he, you know, basically letting you know that what he's going to tolerate and what he isn't going to tolerate? Like, what kind of father was he when he was raising you and your other brothers or sisters?
Well, he was a great father. He was very loving. I think he was a great example to me. Now, people might see some irony in that, but understand this. You know, in the house, in the family, my dad was just dad. He didn't bring what was going on in the outside world into the house. And I think he raised us properly. You know, from the time I was 5 years old, he told me, Mike, you got to be a man's man. That's the standard in life you have to live up to. You got to respect women and children. You got to have dignity. You know, you got to be honest. He taught me those principles, and he acted that way inside of our house. You know, I didn't know what was going on when I was a kid growing up in his outside world. And like I said, he didn't bring it into the house. So he was a good father. Yeah, he demanded respect. He demanded things from us. He never, I think, you know, my dad only hit me once, you know, and he didn't hit us. He would just he had a heavy hand and he would hit us in the back of the neck, you know, that's, you know, to make us know he was upset. But that happened one time in my entire life. He spoke to us. He spoke sternly. He was a person that commanded respect. So when he spoke, at least for me, I listened. You know, I did everything to try to please my dad. He was a major you know, person that formed who I am and formed my life. So I have nothing but good things to say about him throughout my childhood.
Mm. Now, take me and the audience through the process of when you are, you know, basically taking the oath, to, you know, to join, you know, the crime family. I mean, now I know it has to be respect, loyalty, and honor. And I know, unfortunately, if you basically disrespect those codes, then basically consequences all involved. Can you explain to the audience about the oath when you are basically giving your life to the mafia?
Yes, you know, when you come into that life, obviously you can't just go up to somebody and say, I'd like to join. Somebody has to propose you. They have to vouch for you, say they have you have what it takes to become a member. In my case, it was my dad. He proposed me for membership when I was maybe 21 years old, 21, 22.
Mm.
And, you know, at that point in time, I sat with the boss. And for those of you that may know, Joe Colombo was shot and seriously wounded. He eventually died from the wounds. A new boss took over at that time. His name was Tom DeBella. Tom has passed on now.
Mm.
And he ran it down to me. He said, Mike, you want to become a member of our life? Here's the deal. From now on, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're on call to serve this family, the Colombo family. And that means if your mother is sick and dying and you're at her bedside and we call you to service, you leave your mother, you come and serve us, for we're number one in your life before anything and everything. When and if we feel you deserve this privilege, this honor to become a member, we'll let you know. And, you know, it's important for people to understand the mob is not a business. It's a way of life. It's a whole subculture from everything else that exists. We do business as part of that life, but it's a way of life. And you have to be totally dedicated. It becomes more important than anything else in your life. And you're told that in no uncertain terms. And obviously respect plays a major part in it. You can't be disrespectful to another made member, can never be disrespectful to the boss. You're signing your death warrant if you do that. And so once I was proposed, I was a recruit. That's the term that you use. And I had to prove myself worthy over the next 2 years or so. And that could have been by doing something very menial, you know, a lot of discipline in that life, a lot of authority. You had to take orders. You had to learn how to take orders. You had to be very disciplined, you know, and there was times you were told to do things that you had to capably carry out. And if you couldn't do them, well, you don't pass the test. So I was in that period for about 2 years. And then on Halloween night, 1975, is when I took an oath with 5 other gentlemen. And, you know, to describe the oath, it's a very solemn ceremony. It was a dimly lit room, very late at night. We walked into the room individually. The boss was seated at the head of like a horseshoe configuration. Underboss, Conciegliere to his left and right. All the capo regimes or captains were alongside of them. I walked down the aisle, stood in front of the boss, held out my hand. He took a little knife, cut my finger. Some blood dropped on the floor. This is a blood oath. I cupped my hands. He took a picture of a saint, a Catholic altar card, put it in my hands and lit it aflame. Didn't hurt, it burnt quickly. It was merely symbolic. And he said, tonight, Michael Franzese, you are born again into a new life, into La Cosa Nostra. Violate what you know about this life, betray your brothers, and you'll die and burn in hell like the saint is burning in your hands. That's the oath. It's very simple ceremony. It takes, you know, 4 or 5 minutes, and you're indoctrinated into that life. And from that point on, you're considered to be a made man, and you're expected and demanded to carry out what all the principles of that life are. And obviously respect and allegedly honor are a big thing in that life. So that's it.
Wow. Now, break down layman's terms so the audience fully understand about the hierarchy in the mafia. I mean, you have the boss, the soldier, the underboss, and is it called Kappa?
Capo regime, yeah, or capo. I mean, that's the short term for it. Really, the hierarchy, in each family has a boss who is obviously, he's the main guy, he's in control. You have an underboss who is the second in command. Then you have a consigliere who is handpicked by the boss to be kind of a counselor, an advisor to him, an advisor to the soldiers and to the capos if they have a situation that they need to confer with somebody. Rather than go directly to the boss, you allegedly go to your consigliere. You certainly can at any point. He's supposed to be the liaison between the boss and the guys underneath. You have a capo regime, which is a captain. That captain has a number of soldiers. A soldier is the official title once you take the oath and get made. And a capo is in charge of as many soldiers as the boss appoints to be under him. And that's the hierarchy. That's how it goes. And then, of course, you have associates, people that are associated with the mob guys, but haven't taken the oath. So they don't command the same respect. They're still expected to abide by rules, but you know, they're not in that elite category of soldier and the fellows above him. So it's a different position, and that's it.
Now, you basically were managing a lot of associates, correct? Under your umbrella.
Yeah, I did, because I had a pretty big crew, and I had a lot of the Russians that were involved in the gas business with me. At one point in time, I had, you know, several hundred people under me that answered to me because of the various businesses that I was involved in. So I had a pretty big crew at that time, yeah.
Now, for the soldiers that didn't carry out orders, did you witness a lot of murders at that time?
Well, you know, Arthur, unfortunately, you know, violence is part of that life. And if you're part of the life, you're part of the violence, and there's no escape. You know, Captain, you know, I want people to understand this, because I've said this many times. Murder in that life is taken very seriously. It's not a random thing. There's no drive-by shootings. You're not allowed to go out and kill people at will. You know, a murder in that life, especially of a made guy, has to be approved by the boss. And there's normally a discussion over it, and a very serious infraction has to be committed in order for that to happen. So, you know, there is a process before something like that happens, especially with a made guy. And so, you know, did I see that in my life? Of course, you know, I was around that. But did I see it on a daily basis? Was it random? Was it happening all the time? No, it's not that way. And I think, you know, the media, law enforcement, sometimes they make people believe that that was a daily occurrence. It wasn't. Now, we had a war in our family. You know, we had a number of wars in our family, and guys within the family were killed as a result. And it's always a power struggle. You know, somebody wants to be boss, and then the boss is opposing that. And so there's a power struggle when you take sides. And unfortunately, the way to resolve things in that life sometimes results in murder. So it happens. But it wasn't, you know, and I'm not demeaning anybody else, but there's not random drive-by shootings and, hey, let's just go kill this guy. It doesn't happen that way. And I think it's important for people to know that. I'm not justifying it in any way. Murder is murder. But I just want people to understand, you know, the process and the way it went at that time.
Now, I know that you just mentioned that there was a lot of wars, and I know business is war. Now, when it comes to the wars, did y'all basically had a lot of wars with the Colombo crime family in New York City?
Well, yeah, I mean, I lived through 2 wars, actually. One, I was really not, fortunately, I didn't participate to a great degree in either one of them. One, I was kind of younger when it happened, but I knew my father's involvement in it. And the other, I was in prison during most of it. So even though I felt it, I wasn't on the street to be involved in it. And that was in the early 90s when I was sitting in solitary. The family went to war over leadership. And obviously I knew all the participants. I think 12 or 13 guys or something like that were killed during that time, some of them that were close to me. So, I mean, I felt it. I felt the impact of it. But remember, a war in that life is always a civil war. Families don't go to war with one another. That ended in the 40s, the 30s and the 40s. And Luciano, put a stop to all of that, and the people around at that time when they created the families and the commissions. So the families don't go to war with one another. That didn't happen in New York. It doesn't happen throughout the country. It's always a civil war over power and or leadership, and people should know that also.
Now, in the Mafia, they basically demand money, power, and respect. Would that be the formula for the mafia?
Well, respect is supposed to be the number one issue. Respect and honor, the number one issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to a degree that is true because look, you have to say this. La Cosa Nostra in our country survived and prospered, really prospered,
Mm-hmm.
for over 100 years in that life. And really, at one point in time, we had a tremendous role in the operation of America, of the country. I mean, we infiltrated, every sector of society from the White House right down to the man on the street in the numbers business. I mean, we control the unions, we control the Teamsters. You control the Teamsters and you control the docks. You control the country in a great way. You call a strike with the Teamsters. There's 2.5 million people don't drive trucks. You call a strike at the docks. Nothing comes in and out of this country without our approval. So those are tremendous power sources to have. And then of course we had politicians that did our bidding for us because we contributed to them. We had them, I don't want to say in our pockets, but we certainly had them a tremendous influence over them. They looked to us for help in different ways. So, the mob in this country survived and prospered under some very strict conditions. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because discipline, respect, honor was a major part of that life. And in order for any organization to really survive, you got to have some discipline. You got to have respect for authority. If you don't respect authority, well, then everybody's running wild and doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. So, does fear play into that? Of course, there's a fear factor that if you don't do the right thing, the people at the top are going to press a button and you're no longer going to be around. And when they say they're going to do it, they do it. You say something, you got to carry it out. So, all of those things played into the mob becoming so powerful in this country for so long. Respect, authority, discipline, and to a certain degree, honor. And unfortunately, that honor deteriorates because money and power sometimes they just pollute honor, and that's life. And it happens in the mob, it happens in our government. It happens, unfortunately, in the church at times. So that's just a fact of life.
Now, they mention your powerful name in the phenomenal hit classic movie Goodfellas. And I know that, Joe Pesci and, Henry Hill and Robert De Niro, they basically played a lot of major, fascinating roles in that movie. Did you build a rapport with Henry Hill and Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci that were actually the actors in that movie, Goodfellas?
Well, let me clear that was a different family. I was kind of shocked when they portrayed me in that movie. Mm-hmm. I think the reason they did that, I knew Henry Hill pretty well. I mean, I went way back with Henry. He had when he was in that Boston College scandal. He was giving me some information. We were making bets at the time. I go that far back with Henry to the 60s. Mm-hmm. And I knew Paul Vario pretty well. He was out on Long Island, and I used to frequent a lot of the clubs that he had, a secret interest in. I knew Jimmy Burke pretty well. So I knew the family pretty well. I didn't really do business with them, but I had some name value at the time. And I was around, and I think they threw my name in there for that reason and threw my character in. So, that's the only thing. And I saw Henry, after that, obviously Henry became an informant, and I bumped into him once or twice, once in prison, once on the street. I've met some of these actors. I don't have a relationship with them, but I've met them throughout my travels. I live out in Southern California, so, you're around and you see people at different places, but I don't have any real relationship with them. I didn't know, what's his name? The guy that played Henry Hill. I didn't know him at the time. Still haven't met him, but, who knows? I mean, it's Hollywood. They're actors.
Now, you also had experiences with Al Sharpton and with Don King. And, unfortunately, I heard that Al Sharpton was an informant. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was part of a, I mean, I knew Al Sharpton very well. You know, Al was, when he was running the streets, we would use Al. I had an interest in a major talent agency that was booking a lot of the black talent at the time, Marvin Gaye, Dionne Warwick, so on and so forth. I knew all of them because of my relationship with Norby Walters, who had this big talent agency. And I go back with Norby's from the time I was a kid. You know, he was around my dad. So, and Al was running the street. We would use Al to bring some people to our agency. And, you know, we'd pay him to do that. He was kind of a gun for hire back then. You know, when I was about to organize the unions in Atlantic City, I had the security guards union. We were going to attempt to organize the security guards in Atlantic City. I used Al Sharpton to bring busloads of people to picket, you know, the hotels in Atlantic City. So that's what kind of the role that Al Sharpton played. He was kind of a street guy, a street hustler back then. So we knew him well. A lot of guys knew him well. And I was involved in an undercover operation. When I say involved, I was the target of it, myself and Don King. And it was called shadow boxing. Obviously, throughout the investigation, I didn't know it was an undercover operation, but they were trying to infiltrate the boxing business, pro boxing business, and trying to, you know, find out if it was as fraudulent and as corrupt as they said it was. So I had two agents around me, undercover agents, excuse me, and they spent several months with me trying to get me to, you know, to prove that there was corruption in the business. And I had Al Sharpton set up a meeting for all of us with Don King. I had met Don once or twice, always got along with him. So Sharpton was kind of the intermediary for that. And what happened is the undercover agent was posing as a former drug dealer, a South American drug dealer who had cleaned up his act, compiled a bunch of money, and wanted to get into the fight game. And what happened was Al Sharpton, knowing that, went up to this person's office that was bugged and wiretapped and everything else, and he tried to make a drug deal with him. And they had it on tape and everything else. And when they presented Al with that, he became an informant, and he started trying to inform on different people. I mean, this is public news. It was front page news in the Newsday and a number of publications. So, you know, he denied it at times, and then he tried to say, well, he was doing the government a favor. No, he was going to jail, and he became an informant and tried to help himself out, and eventually he did.
Okay, so with the information on Al Sharpton is basically is public knowledge.
Oh, public knowledge. I mean, I can give you the newspaper. It was front page news where he was an informant, and actually 48 Hours did a whole big hour on it. Well, not an hour, whatever the segment was, but they did a big segment on it, and they showed him in the office trying with a big cowboy hat and a cigar, trying to make a drug deal with an undercover agent. So this is public knowledge, and I don't know how he can deny it in face of that, but since it's old, people don't go back and do their research. But you know, it's near here or there. He reinvented himself now, and Al is doing well, and he's the kind of guy that's always going to land on his feet, I think. So you know, I have no bitterness towards him.
Michael, I appreciate you coming on my show today, because the whole premise of my show is to educate entrepreneurs and business leaders on a national, international scale that they can live the life that they truly desire, but they have to be open to these important principles. So I don't like what I see what's on the news, so I create my own news.
Well, it's good, Arthur. You know, and you know, entrepreneurs, I think they understand this. Business is business, whether you're doing it illegally on the street or you're doing it legally. And that's what I emphasize in my book. There's two ways to do it as far as I'm concerned. You know, you do it the right way, you do it the wrong way. You could do it the wrong way for a while and still be successful. It's kind of a Machiavellian ideology in running your business. But I like to pattern it now, because I once did it under the Machiavellian principles, but now, you know, I do it under the book of Proverbs. Solomon was a very wise man, and if you run your business and run your life the way Solomon lays it out in Proverbs, then you'll be okay. You know, you'll succeed. And I lay that out in the book. And, you know, I also say this. Normally, you're going to run your business like you run your life. Your business is an extension of your life. So if you handle your life well, normally that's going to show itself in business. If you're an entrepreneur and you get involved, if your life is disorganized and you're hanging with the wrong people and doing things that are eventually going to get you in trouble personally, well, you'll probably follow the same pattern in your business. So I emphasize that in the book. It's certainly been true in my life. And I think it'll be true to others if they apply those principles. I think it'll be helpful to them.
Now, earlier, you mentioned that powerful word, money. Now, let's have a in-depth conversation about money. Now, I know money is not value. Money is just a facilitator to do transactions. Can you explain to the audience, how would you define money?
Well, obviously, biblically, it's the root of all evil. And, I think there's some truth to that if you handle your money the wrong way. Obviously, if you make money your God and the most important thing in your life, and the acquisition or the obtaining of money, if that is more important than anything else, well, obviously, it does become the root of all evil. Money is a tool. The way I view it now, there was a point in time when I wanted to accumulate wealth. I wanted to accumulate as much money as I possibly can. I don't know why, Arthur. It's not like I was going to go buy every building in New York, or I wanted to buy a 100-foot yacht or any of that. I just enjoyed making money. It turned me on back then. I just wanted to acquire wealth for the sake of acquiring wealth. And, my attitude, that was the wrong attitude, back then. And my attitude now is money is a tool, not to buy happiness, but to buy comfort. Okay. To be able to pay your bills, to be able to take a vacation, to be able to put a roof over your head and food in your mouth and your family's mouth, and to enjoy what life will offer you. And I look at it that way, and it's worked a lot better for me now, because I'm not trying to be the wealthiest guy in the world. I'm not trying to outdo anybody. I just want to be comfortable. And, money is also a measure of success, because if you succeed in business, well, then money is a byproduct of that. So it kind of is evidence that you're doing the right thing if you're doing it the right way. So, that's how I look at it. And I think if entrepreneurs look at it that way, if people in life view money that way, I think they'll find it easier to obtain. I think they'll have the right outlook once they get it and spend it wisely. And I think at that point in time, it'll be a benefit to their life. And that's how you have to look at it.
You said money is a measure of success. So would you say that money is a byproduct of the value that you uncover?
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, you're in business to make money. That's normally the main reason you're there. I mean, at some point in time, when you've made enough money, you can just be in business for the joy of being in business, whatever that might be. But I think, initially you want to make money, and money is evidence that you're doing the right thing in your business, because if you're not, you're probably not going to make that much money. So it's going to show itself that way. So, money could be a very good thing if used properly and viewed the right way.
Wow. Michael, you basically did prison time, and I know you did Fed time. You didn't do state time. And I know you got involved with racketeering. Can you explain to the audience, for the people that don't know, what is racketeering, and what was the experience like when you was doing Fed time?
Well, if you had to do time, you're better off doing federal time than state time. The feds, I think, run their prisons more effectively. Normally they're cleaner, and it's just a better system. And anybody that's done both will tell you that. They don't have as much of a gang issue. That's really a problem in a lot of prisons throughout the country, because they separate people. They have the ability to do that because it's a nationwide system. So if they feel that there's a gang issue, they'll separate gang people, and they don't have those problems to the extent that the state does. The state doesn't have that ability all the time. So a lot of the time, you know, the gangs are all together and it causes problems within the prison that you don't see with the feds. So if you had to do time, you know, you're better off doing it with the feds. Now, I did some rough time because they kept me locked down. I was in a hole for almost 3 years. So being in solitary anywhere is tough. And, you know, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it in any way. I mean, you know, I think I did it as well as anybody, but it's tough to be in solitary confinement for that length of time. And, you know, I'm against that. I don't think it does anybody any good. I think only people that are a danger to others in the system should be in solitary. I don't believe it's good for young people. I'm totally against it, but that's a whole nother subject. But, you know, I did 8 years total, and I did do, out of that, I did 11 months in the state. So, I mean, I definitely know the comparison, and I know the strong and weak points of both. RICO Act is an act that was put on the books in 1970, Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organizations Act. It was put there really to fight the mob. Nobody used it effectively in law enforcement until Giuliani came into office and became the U.S. Attorney in New York, in Manhattan, and used it very effectively against myself and my former associates. You know, I was indicted under the Racketeering Act by Rudy Giuliani's office, and I was acquitted after a several-month trial, but I certainly experienced what defending that law is all about. It's a very difficult law to defend. It's very complicated. I can't really go into it now, but it's really what I say is responsible for taking down my fellow associates in New York. You know, it was devastating, and it was devastating throughout the country. Unfortunately, the government is using it now against people that they shouldn't use it against, but it was a tool to be used against the mob, a very effective one. So I've experienced it all, Arthur. I mean, I've gone through all of this stuff. So, you know, I tell people in business, don't get involved. You don't want to get involved with the feds in any way, shape, or form, believe me, because they have all the tools, all the money, all the time in the world to go after you. And at times they do it in a way that is very difficult to fight and defend. And I've certainly experienced that through myself, my father, my associates. I know all about it.
Now, you did 8 years, you know, doing prison time with the feds. Now, during that time, did you get any contra visits?
No, they don't have no conjugal visits in the feds, none whatsoever. That's a state.
Wow.
Yeah, no, you don't have that privilege in the feds.
Wow. Now, during that time when you were incarcerated, what was your thought process during that time when you did your 8-year bid? I mean, were you thinking, you know, when I get out of during my sentence, you know, I'm just going to just, you know, live a different type of lifestyle? Were you thinking about, you know, becoming a published author and, you know, publishing your own intellectual property with writing books? What was your thought process? And while you were in there, were people friendly towards you, or were they trying to, you know, rub your feathers, so to speak, so they can get you out of alignment with your character in terms of, you know, maybe they want to try to be disrespectful by you going upside their head in terms of their verbiage? Like, what was your thought process during that time?
Yeah, I never had a problem with anybody in prison. You know, I had a lot of publicity at the time, so I came in with kind of recognition. You know, when you're a mob guy in prison, you know, people kind of respect you. It goes, you know, it goes into the behind the bars there, and people give you a certain amount of respect, and it's up to you to keep it or lose it. You know, I got along with everybody. I didn't have any problems with anybody there. You know, my father taught me one thing. My father taught me many things, but he taught me one thing that really helped me in prison. He says, Mike, if you ever have to do time, he says, I want you to remember 3 words that'll help you out tremendously in prison. He said, and I'll never forget, he said, know how to say please, know how to say thank you, and know how to say excuse me. And what he was telling me was that respect in prison goes a long way, because there's so many guys that never had respect on the street want all the respect in there. It's kind of like a badge of honor to them. So you bump into somebody, oh, excuse me. You know, you want to cut into somebody on a line, please, do you mind if I get ahead of you? You know, I got a friend here. Somebody hands you something, you say thank you. When you do that and people see that you're not, you know, that you're a respectful first person to begin with, you don't have any problems. I never had any problem with anybody in prison, not one encounter with anyone, because I carried myself that way. Now, you know, the flip side of that is I had people coming up to me all the time, wanting to get into the gas business, wanted my advice, looking to borrow money. You know, I had all of that. And I'll tell you something funny, Arthur. Before I went to prison, you know, we didn't have cell phones back then. I never forgot a phone number or a face. I had like a photographic memory because I wouldn't write things down. When I came out of prison, I couldn't remember a phone number or a face. Why? Because I had so many people coming up to me all the time with a different deal. Oh, this and that and that. And it would go in one ear and right out the other. And I would just blank it out and walk away. So that stayed with me. Now, if I don't have a number in my cell phone, I don't even remember my wife's number. You know, I got to look at it, look it up. So, you know, some of those byproducts of doing time, they come out. But, you know, to answer your question, what was I thinking of? You got to understand something. You know, the feds put a tremendous amount of pressure on me. It became public that I had walked away from that life. I did have a contract on my life. You know, people were very upset with me. So, you know, my process was, when I get out of here, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do to reinvent myself? Because I'm no longer in that life. Because remember, that's the life I knew. I was a product of that life. So now I had to reinvent myself. I moved out to California. I had no clue what I was going to do. I was going to revert to my business sense, get in business in some way. I had no clue what business was going to be, even though I had ran automobile dealerships for many years. I was in the movie business, so I was going to probably pursue that. I never in a million years thought of writing books or being a speaker. I kind of backed into that. So, you know, the process for me getting from where I was to where I am now, I can't claim a lot of credit because it's not something that I had ever planned to do. You know, you know, it's amazing how it happened because it was not a plan. It just happened. You know, it developed. And you know, I explain that by God having a different purpose for me in my life that I was unaware of. But I was being groomed for that, even through all the bad stuff that I went through. I mean, it was a preparation for what I'm doing now.
Wow. Michael, can you break down layman's terms so the audience fully understand what is the best advice that you have ever received?
You know, I mean, look, I've received a lot of good advice, but you know, advice that's really helped me out throughout my life is my dad. Again, I attribute this to him. Always told me, Mike, be a good listener. Don't lead with your mouth, lead with your brain. And before you open your mouth and respond to something, and before you open your mouth and maybe make a fool of yourself because you don't have proper information, you didn't listen to what's being asked of you or told to you, always become a good listener. Listen before you speak. That has helped me out throughout my court cases. It's helped me out throughout my entanglements with law enforcement. It helped me out tremendously on the street and all the various sit downs that I got involved with. I always paid attention to what people were saying before I responded. In that life, your words can get you killed. And if you don't speak properly and with the right intent, you could have a real problem. And that's helped me throughout my life. So I've preached that. Secondly, I've been told, this has been confirmed so many times in my life, is this, Arthur: in this world, we are who we hang out with. It's extremely important to surround yourself with the right people, because the right people that will hold you accountable to certain principles and ideals in your life. Because look, I say this, when I left that life and I became a person of faith, I didn't get a lobotomy. I don't forget the 25 years I put on the street. I still have those tendencies. I can still fall back. I can still go in to do the wrong thing. But the reason I don't do it is because the people around me that I've associated with myself hold me accountable. My wife holds me accountable. My kids, the people that I'm in ministry with, they hold me accountable. The people that I'm partners with in business, I have to do the right thing because they won't tolerate anything less from me. And even when my mind drifts and I'm maybe thinking about doing something, you know, it's very hard. When I go to a gas station You know, it's like a constant reminder of what these pumps meant to me, the millions of dollars that they generated. It's so easy for me to get back into that, but I won't do it. And because I'm being held accountable. So be a good listener and surround yourself with the right people that hold you accountable. If you do those two things, the possibility of your success increases quite a bit.
That's absolutely true. You are who you hang around, and you become a product of your environment, or you can not become a product of your environment. How do you feel about brainstorming groups? And do you feel as though the entrepreneurs and business leaders should formulate their own focus groups and brainstorming groups so they can help one another to excel to the next level?
Yeah, I think those kind of groups are a double-edged sword. I think the importance of that is to have the participants in group have to have the right mindset. You know, they really have to be participating in that group for the benefit of everybody, not for the benefit of only themselves. And if you can put a group together of entrepreneurs or business people that say, hey, there's areas of improvement that we collectively as a group can come together and try to implement so that it'll benefit all of us. It'll benefit our industry. It'll benefit the people that are our clients, the people we're selling to, the people we're in business with. Then it's great. You can't have somebody, a part of that group that's going to pollute it or is going to be out for their own, benefit, not the benefit of the group. So I think it's very, very helpful if you have the right people involved.
What do you think that was the demise of the Colombo crime family?
Well, I think it's not only our family, but it was families throughout New York and, you know, in a great part throughout the United States. Again, the very effective use of the Racketeering Act, the Bail Reform Act, meaning that, you know, the government now, through the Bail Reform Act, had an excuse not to give people bail. You were either a danger to the community or you were a flight risk. And if you're part of a racketeering indictment, it's very easy to prove that you're a danger to the community just by being part of that racketeering indictment. So very, very difficult, a lot harder to fight a case from inside prison than it is from outside, obviously. So, and then the Sentencing Reform Act, no more parole. You got big time, you got to do 85%. You know, I'll tell you what the demise of our life, I can sum it up. When guys on the street became more fearful of the government than they did of their bosses, that's when this life started to collapse. And the government was able to obtain that power through the RICO Act that now calls for huge sentences if you got convicted, through the Bail Reform Act, which immediately incarcerated you, and then obviously through the Sentencing Reform Act, which ensured the fact that you're going to do just about all your time. You're going to do 85%, no more parole. So those three tools and weapons really caused the demise of the mob as we knew it. Now, it's not gone. Don't get me wrong. It's not going away. It won't go away in my lifetime, but it certainly put a major, major dent in it. And, you know, and through the RICO Act, the government took away control of the unions, control a lot of the power sources that we had back then, and turned a lot of people into informants and, eventually caused tremendous damage.
Now, you develop a relationship with John Gotti. Can you expand on that about how was John Gotti and what was his thought process in regards to the role that he played at that time?
Well, look, I knew John fairly well. I went way back with him when his son was accidentally killed, in an accident in a street in front of his house. I attended the funeral. I knew his family. I had encounters with John, at least 2 or 3 occasions on the street involving gas and a flea market that we had. And then I seen him socially, and I like John. I always said I respected John because he made no bones about who he was. He was a gangster. That's all he wanted to be. He said it. Was he eventually good for the life? Guys that are so high profile, they don't help themselves and they don't help the life. And unfortunately, that's who John was. And I think it worked against him. at some point in time. Obviously, he died in prison. You know, he eventually went down. So when you become that high profile, you're really causing yourself a lot of problems. But he didn't care. That's who he was. So at least he was who he was, and he didn't make any bones about it. You know, and you know, I had encounters with him on the street. He was difficult to deal with business-wise because he did have, you know, a tremendous ego. John was a guy that had to win all the time. So if you were going to get what you wanted out of him in a business negotiation, you had to, you know, try to figure out how to outsmart him. I mean, that was the way you beat John Gotti. So I was fortunate in one instance that I was able to at least got what I wanted out of the deal that I had with him. You know, I was able to keep him away in the gas business because it wasn't John in particular, but the more people that got involved, the more possibility that it was going to fall apart, which eventually happened. So, but again, to sum it up, I like John. I respected John. I like his family. I'm still in touch with them. And what happened to him was just sad. It was what happened to him and a lot of other guys.
Michael, I wrote down some powerful words, 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. So you can rate them in your own powerful way. Are you ready?
Sure.
Accountability.
I rate that right up top, you know, right up top. Being accountable, again, it's about you are who you hang with, and being accountable in life, accountable to your God, accountable to your family, accountable to law enforcement, accountable to your community. It's everything. And that may be number one on my list.
Perseverance.
You know, high up there. Look, we have a lot of struggles and challenges in life that we have to overcome. I mean, mine were different than others, but you know, and everything is relative. You know, it's something I tell my kids when they whine or complain when they were younger about, you know, life being tough and so on and so forth. And I always would say to them, you know, what about the kids living in Somalia and South Africa, in places where these kids did nothing wrong in their life? All they did was be born. And look at the struggles and challenges that they have to face. And you kind of have the nerve to sit here and whine when you have a roof over your head and food in your mouth and so on and so forth. I said, you know, sometimes you have to persevere in life and get through, you know, the stuff that's in front of you. And look, if I didn't have that attitude, I don't think I would have ever gone out of prison. I mean, I would have folded under some stuff that was going on with me, but I was motivated and I wanted to persevere because I wanted to get home with my family. I wanted to create my life for myself. You know, in business, you have struggles all the time and you got to persevere to get through them. So perseverance is a quality that, you know, people need to have in order to succeed. And I think every entrepreneur that succeeded, perseverance was part of his character and his makeup, or her makeup also.
Value.
You know, value is double-edged sword again. You know, what are your values in life? If you value money, well, you know, if you value it in the wrong way, it's going to be a problem for you. You value your family, well, then you're right on point, because your family comes above everything and everybody else in life. You know, if you can't be good to your family, how are you going to be good to anybody else? It's that kind of a thing. So value is important. Again, these words, it all depends on how you view them and how you use them. So using, you know, I mean, defining value in your life in the right way is obviously very important.
Building great relationships.
Extremely important. It goes along with you are who you hang with. You don't want to burn bridges in your life. You know, I have in my life, I've done sometimes things that I wish I hadn't done, and I burned a bridge that I shouldn't have burned. You know, as I got older, hopefully I didn't do that. But when I was younger, I might have done that. And you know, you don't want to burn bridges. So you want relationships in life that are meaningful, and you also want to stay away from relationships that are harmful to you.
Health.
Health, did you say?
Health.
Oh, health.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously vitally important. I mean, I live in my household with my wife and my daughters that are health fanatics. I call them Franzese fitness freaks, because all they worry about is staying healthy in their body and their nutrition and their workouts and so on and so forth. But Listen, it's so important. I mean, you got to maintain your health. When you have health issues, it interferes with everything else in life. My dad is 102 years old. And throughout his life, he was kind of a health guy. He believed in vitamins. He used to give us as kids cod liver oil because he thought it was good for us. He used to take 30 vitamin pills a day at one point in time. He didn't smoke. He never drank. Same with me. I don't smoke. I never drank really to any excess, a little glass of wine every once in a while. And I've so far been healthy. But my dad's certainly proof that if you take care of yourself, you got a good shot, living long. And so your health is important.
Wealth.
Wealth, again, to me, it's important. It all depends on what your level of wealth is that you need to be happy in life. It doesn't buy happiness, but it helps you become comfortable. And being comfortable, I think, is a byproduct of happiness. So accumulating wealth to the point where it gives you comfort in life and peace and allows you to help others, it's important.
Loyalty.
Loyalty is obviously very important. It's something that was stressed in my former life, and unfortunately, it was corrupted quite a bit. But loyalty, it breeds healthy and strong relationships. So very important.
Marriage.
Well, look, I've been married twice. My first marriage didn't last. It was a little under 10 years. I think I married a good person, but I married for the wrong reasons, and it didn't last. But I've been married now to my wife for 34 years. We're going on 35. And we've had a lot of struggles and challenges, but we love each other dearly. And to me, it's been a godsend in my life. I don't think I would be around if I didn't meet this girl and marry her. So marriage is important if it's good for you. Some people do well not being married. So I can't comment on that if they're living their life and everything's good. But for the right two people, it's a great institution. And, I have 7 children, and they wouldn't be here if I wasn't married. So, and I have 6 grandchildren. So to me, it's been a blessing.
Family.
Family's everything. To me, my family, other than my God, my family comes above and beyond everything else. And it's like I said, if you can't be responsible and take care and love your family, how are you going to be good with others? So family is important. I was part of a mob family, and I had that whole family ideology, and now in my own family, to me, it's more important than anything else.
Integrity.
Integrity is important. Unfortunately, I've always not operated, with integrity in my life, I think, and at the times when I didn't, I paid for it, and I didn't have a good conscience about it. Integrity means a lot. Your word means a lot. There was times when I gave my word and didn't keep it, and it hurt afterwards. And times when people gave me their word and didn't keep it. And that's all part of integrity. So it's important. I try to, work on being a better person of integrity throughout my life. And I try to do that now. So it's important for you as a person and for the people around you, how they view you.
Love.
Well, listen, the 2 greatest commandments are love God and love your neighbor. So if you're not a person that can express love and that has love in your heart, I don't think you're going to be a good person. So love is really the emotion that carries a person throughout his life, and that dictates what type of person he or she will be.
Wisdom.
Again, I really can say that the book of Proverbs, written by Solomon, the most wise man that ever walked the face of the earth, with the exception of Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, it's a book that's had a major impact on me. I mean, wisdom is part of everything in life. I mean, you gotta navigate this life, both on a business and a personal level, knowing what you're doing. And that all comes through wisdom, through learning experiences, through gaining knowledge. You know, wisdom is knowledge, knowledge is wisdom. They're interchangeable. So very important part of your life.
All right, that was good. That was real good, Michael. Can you explain to the audience exactly where they can find you?
Well, I'm easy to find. I mean, I'm all over social media. I have, you know, it's funny, Arthur, I never had my own YouTube channel. I have about 200 YouTube videos up there. Somebody did a recent count, and all combined, you know, probably over 20 million views, but I never had my own channel. I just put my channel, I'm in partnership now with people that are developing this coaching career for me. And I think it's a natural extension for what I've been doing. I've been doing that really my whole life, especially these last 25 years, in all of my speaking engagements and all of my social media interactions, you know, and all of my personal reactions. So we created a YouTube channel. A lot of the, I'm going to be speaking more on YouTube, developing more content. I'm all over Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I use all of those platforms. I have many documentaries that have been on me. I'm on Netflix. I did History Channel things and so on and so forth. My website is michaelfranzese.com, so I'm easy to find in that way. So I'm easy to reach. I'm not in the shadows.
Now, we covered a lot of ground about the Colombo crime family, about your fascinating lifestyle when you was in the Colombo crime family, and we covered about, you know, soldiers and former mob bosses and undercover bosses as well. From your own experience, I know you traveled all over the world. I know you've seen and been through a lot of experiences, good and bad, from people having money to people that have a little bit of money or people that don't have any money at all. What do billionaires and hecto-millionaires do on a consistent, regular basis that unfortunately broke entrepreneurs, they just don't do?
Well, they get to enjoy all the toys in life and all the, you know, the perks that come with money, you know, and they just live a different lifestyle. You know, what could I say? I mean, money allows you to have those perks, allows you to live in a different way. They don't experience things that those that don't have that kind of money can experience. So they're on just a whole different level. And that doesn't mean they don't remember where they came from. I mean, I know a lot of wealthy people that they live a lavish lifestyle now because they can, but they also remember little people. I have a very dear friend who is extremely wealthy, and he lives in Texas, and has an amazing house and cars and, you know, all over the world and so on and so forth. But he's the most down-to-earth guy, him and his wife, that you ever want to meet. His goal in life, along with his comfortable lifestyle, he wants to help people, and he does everything he can. And he's a tremendous, tremendous man. And, you know, I won't mention his name because he'll be embarrassed by it. But he's become a dear friend. And so there are people that, you know, enjoy all the perks that their wealth can give them, but they're also good people, don't forget where they came from, and want to use their wealth to help others. So, you know, I mean, there is that difference with people, and obviously money is the deciding factor there, you know, and, you know, what could I say? I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything that people don't know. But that's how I saw it, and that's how I've experienced it.
Right. Yes. A lot of wealthy people, they became that way because they were given, and living is given. And, you know, a lot of wealthy people, when they actually build profitable businesses, they are stimulating the economy by, you know, creating jobs. So they expand the economy by, you know, giving those opportunities and people capitalizing on those opportunities by getting involved with their businesses and expanding their top line revenues in those companies. Let's have a conversation about the power of using video. Now, I know a couple of years back, Google bought YouTube for $1.6 billion. So video is hot right now. Can you explain to the audience the power of using video, and should entrepreneurs and business owners use video to expand their brand?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that, but something you said was very interesting, you know, and I wanted people to understand my perspective. I don't know why people would resent people that have worked hard or even, you know, established major businesses that have a major impact on the economy, on putting people to work, on so on and so forth. And there's an attitude out there, you know, and it's mostly on the left, and I'm not getting political, but that's where it comes from, where they have this resentment towards people that have worked hard and created, you know, a tremendous business for themselves and have added to the economy of the country and of the world. Why would you resent people like that? I applaud those people, and I want them to be even more successful, because that success, you know, it does filter out into the country, into the cities, into the communities. If people weren't making money, you know, and able to employ people, engage people, put products out there that we use in our households, what would we have here? You know, there are so many examples throughout the world of countries that are not capitalist countries like America, where people are struggling and struggling just to put food on their table and survive, because the government runs those countries and doles out what they want to dole out to the people. You don't have the opportunity to build and become wealthy and share that in different ways. So we need to applaud these people. We need to applaud, you know, the Buffetts of the world. Even though we have different political views from them, these people engage and employ and add to our lifestyles in a way that people just don't understand. You know, so I just wanted to make that comment. And I hope people view it that way. Don't resent people that have made it in this world, because whether you realize it or not, it's filtering out into the rest of the country, into the rest of the world in ways that you may not see. But if you sat down with somebody that can point these things out to you, you might have a different perspective. And as far as, you know, video is concerned, look, you know, I did two, you know, the Patrick Bet-David video, Valuetainment, and Vlad TV. I mean, between the videos I did with those, there were about an hour and a half on each interview that I did. Well, they've already passed 16 million views, and they're climbing. And as a result of that, I've been contacted all over the world. I mean, I have a base now in the United Kingdom. I have a base in Southeast Asia. I have a base in Australia, all from these YouTube videos. The power of the internet, if used properly, can expand your business in a way that you would never have dreamed of, because you can reach people instantly now that you could never do before, and it really doesn't cost that much. So it's an amazing tool if it's used properly. And I'm speaking now, I have a tour in the United Kingdom. I'm going to Bulgaria. I've been in Southeast Asia. I've been in Australia. I'm getting offers all over the world. And so many people, when I ask them, well, how did you find out about me? Well, we saw you on YouTube. So it's a tremendous platform if used properly. And I encourage those entrepreneurs. You know, I did a show in Vegas, and I can tell you this: the conventional way of marketing and advertising falls far short of the power of the internet today, as far as a marketing tool. If you use it properly, and you got to study it, you got to learn it, you got to know how to use it. It's like anything else. But if you use it properly, there is no greater marketing tool than you have in social media and the internet. And I'm convinced of that. And I don't think that people will prove me wrong. It's something that if you're in business, you need to understand it. You need to get experience in it, and you need to use it effectively to expand and market your business.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Because marketing done right, that's the quickest path to the sale. So would you say that sales is the more avenue to more revenue?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, you know, I mean, I'm not in the sales business, but basically I'm selling myself. You know, I get paid, you know, fees for my speaking. I get, you know, people see my books, they go out and buy them. So sales, whether we realize it, we're always selling something. You know, I just happen to be my own product. But, you know, and the internet has worked very well for me in that regard. And it costs me nothing to go on YouTube and do an interview. I just happen to choose the right platforms. You know, I'm sure, Arthur, I'm going to get some good feedback from this interview that we're having now. That's how it works. you know, you're out there doing your thing and working hard and making these interviews available to people that would have never known who I was, and they might spark some interest in me and go to my website, and, you know, who knows, that's how it works. But that's how social media works, and that's how these things work. So you have to take advantage of it. I mean, remember, this is instantaneous marketing. I mean, you know, you put this out, people tune in, you have an instant audience where, and it's not confined to your community. It's not confined to your city. You don't have to pay huge dollars to put it out nationally on television or radio. You know, it's there instantly all over the world, whoever has access to this. So it's an amazing tool.
Now, I interviewed Abraham Bolden. He was the first African-American Secret Service agent that was involved with John F. Kennedy. Do you think that John F. Kennedy assassination was an inside job, or do you think that the Mafia played a major role in that?
Well, Arthur, look, I've been asked this so many times, and, you know, look, people out there will say, Mike, you're full of baloney, Mike, you're making this up, or, you know, you hear all sorts of things because everybody has their own opinion about everything. But I will tell you this, look, my father's been in that life 68 years. He's the oldest living mob guy in America, quite honestly, quite possibly rather, in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's been around a long time. He's been through that whole era. I was around through that era. I've heard things, I've seen things, I've witnessed things, I've been in conversations with people. There's no doubt in my mind that our life, my former associates played a role in the Kennedy assassination. I won't get into deep. I mean, I spoke about this in the interview with Patrick Bet-David.
Mm-hmm.
There's no value in me telling this. I'm not earning money on it. I'm not going out to try to sell the story. Mm-hmm. I'm only telling you what I know. And I've heard from very, very good sources that this was definitely a mob-related hit, and that we had something to do with this. And there are reasons for that. So it all makes sense to me. Look, my father has told me things that I believe he's embellished in his life. I've heard things on the street that, you know, I weigh and say, all right, how much truth is to this? How much of it is somebody embellishing what really happened? And I believe, okay, based upon what I know, what I've heard, what I've experienced, mm-hmm. that the Kennedy assassination was a product of a mob hit. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And I'll say it until I close my eyes and leave this world. But that's what I believe.
Mm.
Now, I will add this.
Mm-hmm.
The government will never, ever want to admit that the mob was powerful enough to assassinate a sitting president. They're not going to admit that. They're going to debunk that theory from now until doomsday. They don't want to. That's a huge black eye for them, and they're not going to admit it. And I don't know what's in these secret, you know, classified documents that rather are part of the Kennedy assassination. Mm-hmm. But I think if they ever do get released, it's going to be very telling. And I think it's going to corroborate. You may not have all the detail, but it's going to corroborate a lot of what I'm saying now. But who knows if we'll ever see them? I don't know.
Now, does the power of the Mafia, does that still exist to this very day?
You know, it's not going away in my lifetime. There's no doubt about it. You know, because what happens, Arthur, these things happens in cycles. What do I mean by that? During the 70s and 80s, the mob was the thing, especially in New York. Kill the mob, go after the mob. Every day in the New York Post, the New York Daily News, the Times, it was a mob-related story. The government back during my day in the 80s, they had 1,400 FBI agents assigned to the 5 families. Now understand, in the 5 families, we had about 750 made members, guys that actually took the oath. Okay, there were a lot of associates. There's 750 made members. So you had 1,400 agents. You had approximately 2 agents to every made guy. All right. Today, all these years later, I believe the latest that I've heard is there are under 100 FBI agents are assigned to the families. Why? Because other things became more important. Terrorism now, obviously major, you know. So what happens is they killed off a great sector of the mob during that time. They really did. They put a lot of guys away. A lot of guys died off, so on and so forth. So then they intensify their efforts on something else. And what happens? The mob starts to build up again. And very quietly now, it has been doing that. Now, there may become a point in time where, again, the intensity will be on the mob and they'll start using that racketeering act again and so on and so forth, and it'll build up. Right now, that's not happening. So it's building up. There's no question about it, okay? The presence is still there, and it's building up. So we'll see what happens. It's not going to go away in my lifetime. That much I can tell you.
So it was a lot of malice and mayhem during that time in the area with the Colombo crime family.
Oh yeah, throughout all 5 families. I mean, guys were getting arrested left and right. Guys were becoming informants left and right. I mean, you know, every day you saw another arrest, another bust, and other guys flipping. You know, it's what I said. I said, man, you know, I was in MDC when they locked me up on a big racketeering case, and I'm watching guys going to trial and coming back, and Arthur, 50 years, 100 years, 300 years. Little Vic, who was, you know, acting boss of our family, they gave him 300 years. 100 years back to back, 300 years. And I was saying, man, I'm the youngest guy out of all of these guys. They're going to give me a 500,000 years. I mean, how much time am I going to get on this if I go down? So I started to really think. And then guys, you know, guys that we were friends with that were part of our crew, Greg Scarpa, this other guy, Willie Boy Johnson, we find out that they're undercover, they're working informants with the government for 20, 25 years. I'm saying, man, what is going on here? So that's when I started to think, I mean, there's not a lot of longevity in this life anymore. I said, the government is winning right now. And it started to make me think, I mean, you know, what am I doing here? I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. So it was mayhem. During the 80s was absolute mayhem.
Now, let's talk about snitching and what would you consider somebody being a rat? Now, I know in the Mafia world, they don't like rats. And I know when you start ratting, basically they do get exterminated. Can you explain that in layman's terms so the audience fully understand? What is considered a man or a woman being a rat in the Mafia world?
You know what, Arthur? I am going to thank you. I have done hundreds of interviews. Nobody has ever asked me that question. And I want to thank you for asking that, because I've been accused of being a rat. You know, I'm going to be open and honest with you, like I have been throughout this interview. And let me make the differentiate, because there is a legitimate guy like yourself, Arthur. Okay, somebody robs your house. What are you going to do? You're going to pick up the phone. You're going to call the police. That's what you're supposed to do. You're a legitimate guy. You're abiding by the law. Okay, guys on the street would call you a rat. You're not a rat. You're doing what you're supposed to do. You didn't take an oath. You're not a street guy. You didn't commit crimes with other people that you're giving up your friends. You're not doing that. You're doing what you're supposed to do. But guys on social media that want to make people think that they're in the know, they'll say, oh, he's a rat because he called the law. Well, you're not a rat. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Now, here's the differentiation. Guys on the street that take an oath to be criminals, that commit crimes with other people, and then to save their own self when they get in trouble, they start to rat out, squeal, snitch on their fellow associates. Well, yeah, we call them a rat, and that is a rat. There's no question about it. That is a rat. Now, I've been called a rat because I've turned my back on my former life. But I want to state this right now for everybody. Nobody ever went to prison because of anything Michael Franzese said to anybody. Nobody. Now, did I at one point in time try to make my peace with the government? Yes, I did. But I didn't do it to get out of prison. I didn't do it to put other people in trouble. I did it to try to preserve my life and that of my family. So, you know, people call me a rat for doing that. I did testify in one case. I was subpoenaed to testify in a case way back when, 30 years ago, against an associate. He wasn't part of that family. It was an associate, somebody that I knew my whole life. I was subpoenaed because this guy was using my name, okay, to threaten people and get himself, and I was going to be indicted along with my father and brother. I sent a message out to him. I said, look, they want you to take a plea. Don't put my father and my brother through this, and myself. I said, we all got our own problems. My father and I were both in jail at the time. Take the plea and end it. He was guilty. He knew it. He was doing exactly what they accused him of doing. Well, he refused to do that. And I was subpoenaed to testify in the case. And I told the truth. Listen, He was my partner. I gave him $250,000, okay? And what he did after that, threatening athletes in my name, I don't know about that. I was in prison. But yes, he was my partner. He was my associate. Now, did he go to jail? No, he didn't. He didn't go to jail. Because of that, I'm being called a rat. Because of the fact that I now make my peace with the government, I speak, 2 weeks ago, I spoke to 1,700 law enforcement people about our gang problem. Because I take a very active role in trying to help these gangbangers get out of jail, get out of that life. I go to prisons all the time. I meet with young people on the street. I try to convince them to get away from that life. So because of that, oh, you're a rat because you're dealing with law enforcement. Well, you know what? To do what I do, you got to have thick skin, Arthur. I never told anything to anybody to hurt somebody. Now, did I lie at times in my life? My father taught me something else again, that this might be wrong. It might be a distorted sense of value, but this is the value I have. My dad said to me, Michael, it's okay to lie if you're going to lie to help somebody. Don't ever lie to hurt anybody. And I won't lie to hurt anybody. I've never had. When I go out on my speaking tours, Arthur, I don't speak about other people in a bad way. I don't have any animosity towards my former associates. Okay, there's the guys I got along with, there's guys I didn't get along with. That I don't badmouth anybody. The one thing that I've said about people, and I'll say it again, I knew Sammy Gravano pretty well, not real well, but pretty well. And I knew John Gotti a lot better. And I will say this, on John Gotti's worst day, he was a far better person than Sammy Gravano. That's my opinion. And what Sammy did, okay, was wrong. Okay, to save himself, okay, he gave up a guy that he was very close to. Now, he can say, whatever he wants to say, but the bottom line, he didn't want to go to jail for the rest of his life. That's why people turn rat and turn informant. They don't want to go to jail for the rest of their life. I've seen so many times, Arthur, and I thank you for giving me this forum. I've seen so many times government informants, okay, guys in the mob that turned, get up on the witness stand, put their left hand on the Bible, right hand swear to tell the truth, and then lie through their teeth. Because they don't want to go to jail. That's why people turn. There's too much jail time. They don't want to go to jail. And that's it. And I was upset with the government. I've said this. Sammy Gravano admitted to 19 murders. He was a serial murderer according to his own admission. How do you make a deal with a guy like that to get John Gotti? Because John snubbed his nose in your face, because he was larger than life on the street. So you make a deal basically with a guy that committed 19 murders and you put him right back on the street? That's what our civilized government is supposed to do? You could have pursued John Gotti. You would have got him eventually. There's no question. You're going to get him eventually. You get all of us eventually. Do it the right way. You're the government. You're supposed to play by the rules. So, again, maybe you've given me a forum to air myself out a little bit. And I appreciate that, Arthur, really. But people can call me what they want to call me. I never hurt anybody. I never put anybody in prison. And you know what? I will say this, and I'm going to end it with this. People have asked me about the mob life. The mob life, the gang life, the street life. They are evil lifestyles. Evil. I'm not calling the guys evil. I was one of them. I just happen to be very fortunate, very blessed. But the lifestyle of evil. Now, why do I say that? I'll tell you why. Because I don't know any family of any member of that life, whether it be the mob, La Cosa Nostra, or a gang, that hasn't been totally destroyed, including my own. Now, not my wife and kids. My mother, 33 years without a husband, died of cancer. At the end of her life, her relationship with my dad can only be described as ugly. Why? Because she blamed my dad for everything that went wrong in life. What went wrong? I had a sister that died of an overdose of drugs at the age of 27. I had a younger sister that died at the age of 42 of cancer. She was a basket case her whole life. My brother was a drug addict his entire life, okay, contracted the HIV virus, went into the witness protection program, got himself in trouble, and testified against my father, put his own father back in jail. That's total destruction, and I attribute that all to my father and my involvement in that life. So any lifestyle that does that to a family is evil. And I can tell you every other member's family that I know has gone through similar kind of life. So a lifestyle that does that is evil. And I'll speak out against it for that reason. And again, I'm not condemning the people because I don't know their hearts. I don't know what's going on. And like I said, I was one of them. I just happen to be very fortunate, very blessed. So I will speak out of that. People want to call me a rat for that? Well, go ahead. But that's my mind frame. That's what I think I'm commissioned to do. And that's it. It's not about putting people in trouble. It's about putting people out of trouble. And that's how I view it. So again, I've never been able to, this is the first time I've been able to expand upon this. And I appreciate you asking that question. Nobody has ever asked that question, and it's extremely important. So again, if you're a law-abiding citizen and you have something go wrong and you notify the law enforcement and the authorities, well, you're doing the right thing. You're not a rat and you're not a snitch. You're doing what you're supposed to do. That's the right moral and legal thing to do. And I tell people, so are you against law enforcement? I said, of course not. I have 5 daughters. I have a wife. I have grandchildren. When they walk down the street, I want them to be protected. When I'm away from home, I want law enforcement to protect my family. Why would I be against them? We need law enforcement. We need law and order. What I am against is government and law enforcement overreaching. I'm against racism and prejudice. I think they have to play it straight. We, the community, the people, we put our lives and our faith and hope in these people to do the right thing, to keep order in our country. So of course we need them, and they're not allowed to step over the line. I'm against that. And when I see that happen, it bothers me. Okay, but I'm not against law enforcement. I'm not against government. I'm against corruption in it. That's it. So again, thank you for letting me air this out. It's very appropriate because there was some guy on YouTube, Arthur, he's been doing this for years, but you know, he's accused me of all things. And you know, I think a lot of these people on social media, they try to become bigger than life to the people that are listening to them. And so often they say things, and I had to acquire thick skin because so often they say things that are so false that they have no idea what they're talking about. But they have an audience that's not educated. And because of that, these audiences listen to them and all of a sudden they have followers and now they have something to do on a daily basis. But, you know, somebody pointed out something last night, and this guy's been doing this for years. He doesn't have a big audience. It doesn't even bother me anymore because he doesn't even know what he's talking about. So I guess that's kind of motivated me to get into this a little bit more. But again, nobody's ever asked me that question, and it's a very important question, and people need to know the distinction. Okay, what a rat is, according to people on the street, and what a person that is doing the right thing does. There's a definite differentiation. So thank you. And I'm sorry if I took up a lot of time on that. I'm sorry, but it's something very personal to me.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down in layman's terms about what is considered a rat. You know, it's just like if somebody murders someone in front of you, and it doesn't fit with you well, then, you know, you have every right to tell the police exactly what happened, especially when someone is no longer exists on this earth. You just took someone's, you know, father, or you took someone's mother or uncle or daughter off the face of the earth. And I think we need more peace and love and unity within a lot of communities on a local level as well as on an international level. I think more love you have, the better all people would be, because love is the strongest force ever, and love is stronger than fear.
Well, you're absolutely right, Arthur. I mean, you've summed it up. You know, and look, I teach my kids, you know, you gotta respect the law. If you see something wrong, you know, depending upon the circumstances, you know, if you went to the police and reported it, I wouldn't be upset. You know, that's just the way. Look, I had a distorted sense of view growing up. I had a distorted sense of view when I was in that life. I don't have that anymore. And, you know, you summed it up though. If people would respect and love people more, look, I hate the word racism. And unfortunately, it's gonna exist until the end of time. It really is. You know, I'll tell you something. You know, when I was in prison, and I'm not going to mention names, but the boss of the LA family, and there really wasn't an LA family. We used to call them the Mickey Mouse Mob. Mm-hmm. But all the guys in prison, when I was in Terminal Island, the Italian guys used to hang out together. And they'd play cards, and they'd tell war stories, and they'd tell all of that, and it was all not, you know, that's what they did. Well, I wasn't interested in that. When I was in jail, I wanted to do my own time. I like to play sports. I'd play softball and I'd be out and I associate with the guys. And quite honestly, Arthur, a lot of the African-Americans I would hang out with quite a bit. Why? They like to play sports. They like to do the things that I did. So one day this alleged boss of the family calls me and he says to me, you know, Mike, you know, what is it with you? He said, I see you eating with these guys. You don't sit with us. You don't talk to us. You don't, you know, why do you hang out with all the black guys and you're not hanging out with us? I said to him, well, what's it to you? Number one. Number one, you play cards. I don't like to play cards. You sit down and tell war stories and talk about each other like you're a big deal. I don't like to do that. I want to do my own time. I enjoy these guys. We play together. I said, I don't see black and white. I don't know what you see, but I don't see that. These are human beings, and we become friends in here. And I hang out with them, and I do my time, and every day passes by. So, but then I had some of the black guys come up to me and say, Mike, these guys shun us. You know, they're racist. And I said, you know, they're not racist. I said, let me explain something to you. You know, they eat the same food. They talk the same language. They're comfortable. They grew up in the same neighborhood. They're just being comfortable with their own guys. It doesn't mean that they don't like you or they resent you or they're racist. I said, you do the same thing. You hang out with your homies, you know, the guys that you're comfortable with. That's not always racism. That's just always, you just hang with people that you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. I said, I think sometimes people take the racism to the wrong level, mm-hmm. you know, and, look, I grew up where, you know, again, Arthur, you give me this. My grandfather, I never understood him. He was my mother's father. I loved him, mm-hmm. but there was no athlete. I used to talk about Willie Mays. Well, Willie Mays is not as good as Mickey Mantle. No black athlete to him was ever as good as the white athlete, right? Mm-hmm. But he was the nicest guy in the world. And let me tell you this, he was a bus driver. So wow. One day he drove the same road for 44 years in New York. One day he takes me on his bus. I was a kid. And I go on the bus and I'll never forget this. I was in awe. It was in a African-American neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Every African-American woman that came on the bus hugged him. He hugged them back. They brought him food. He was the nicest guy in the world. So I said to him, Grandpa, why is it that none of the black athletes, I says, and all of these women and all of these people you're so close with and friendly with? And he said, I just don't believe that that Mickey Mantle, that Willie Mays is as good as Mickey Mantle. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a black and white thing, but I viewed it that way. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes people, they distort things. They think there's racism and it's really not.
Right.
And it's a term that I hate. I hate to hear it. I hate to hear it as an excuse. I just don't like it. And you're right. If people would just look at people as people and have a little bit more love and feeling, we wouldn't be in the condition that we are in this country, especially in this world. And, you know, I want to tell you something. I happened to meet Obama. I was on the beach with him one day. I had a meeting with him. I had pictures with him in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. We had a good time talking together, you know, nice guy. My disappointment in Obama was I thought that he could have done a lot more to heal the racism in this country. Mm-hmm. And I wish he would have done that because it's such a major stumbling block to our communities. And I really wish he would have tried to bring people together more than he did. That was my disappointment with him. And because I thought I voted for him. Well, I didn't vote because I can't vote as a felon. Now I can, but I was all for him because that was a major deal to me. We have a president that's going to be able to really help the racism in this country. And I wish he would have focused more on that because he was a strong voice and I think he could have accomplished a lot more. I don't know how you feel about Arthur, but I really wish he would have because it's a terrible disease in this country that we have to somehow overcome.
Yes, most definitely. Obama, he did a fair job while he was in office for 8 years. And I think he could have did more for, you know, the African-American community in regards to giving them opportunities and creating jobs by stimulating the economy. And he did everything for the other nationalities and for the LGBT community. But, you know, when it comes to, you know, the president and the powers that be. I mean, he doesn't run the show. He's basically the manager for the elite. And, you know, when it comes to political views, I know a lot of our culture, they thought that he was going to get in there and really make a difference. But you got to remember that he also has bosses that he has to answer to as well, because at the end of the day, being the president of the United States is basically a job.
Yeah, that's very true, Arthur. And I think you nailed that too. If people understood the restrictions also that presidents have on them, because it's always the buck stops with them. But and you know, we perceive it that way. But they have a lot of restrictions from people they have to answer to, and it is tough. You know, there's no question about it. And but look, we have to give our presidents respect, and we have to try to you know, support them in putting the right agenda forth for our country. I mean, I think that's what it's all about. But, you know, I don't want to get into politics because that gets us in trouble. But,
right.
You know, the racist issue, I think, you know, I'm with you. You know, love is the cure for that. And hopefully, you know, our churches could, you know, can have an impact. And I think they try. I mean, look, I've spoken at over 1,800 churches in the last 20 some odd years. So I've been in front of a lot of congregations. You know, one thing that gets me, you know, I've done a lot with athletes. I've spoken at over 350 universities to Division I and II, to all the student athletes. I've done all the pro sports. I don't see racism in sports. I really don't. And it's great to see that, because not to any, you know, these guys have each other's backs, and, you know, there's a team effort. And I wish that could just expand throughout society, that when you're in a deal together, and really when you're in this country, we're in a deal together. When you support one another rather than look down and try to outdo and so on and so forth, great things happen. That's how teams win. You know, by everybody having each other's back, whether you're black, red, white, yellow, it doesn't matter. And I really respect that, and I enjoy seeing that in sports. And I've seen that to a great degree.
Yes, yes. I don't believe in racism, but I do believe in ignorance. See, ignorance is always going to try to dominate over intelligence, but intelligence will always dominate over ignorance. And I think that certain cultures just don't understand certain cultures. You know, Black African-American communities don't understand Latino, and they don't understand, you know, European culture. But I think if we just come together as a conglomerate and really understand one another and understand each other's belief systems and value systems, you'll find out that we have a lot of values that can correlate with one another. And then once we combine forces, then we can just basically take over this country, but we can do it together instead of, you know, separate.
Well, Arthur, you know, we need more voices like yours out there, because that was a very, very intelligent, very true thing to say. And I hope you continue what you're doing, and people really pay attention and listen, because what you said was so true, so true. And if we can get more people to understand that, it would really benefit, you know, all of humanity here in our country and throughout the world.
Michael, you are not a bullshit entrepreneur. You are definitely the real deal. Do you have any last pearls of wisdom for the audience?
Well, again, you know, I think the most important thing I could say, you know, is for those of you out there that want to be in business, that are in business, take a good look at yourself, look in the mirror, and look at how you run your life. And your business is going to be an extension of how you've lived your life. And you may have success in business, but be a failure in your life, with your families, with your communities. To me, that's not a successful business person. Successful business person has a successful life. So I'd really evaluate yourself at that point in time. Remember, business is business. There are certain principles that you have to adhere to in order to be successful. I think we've talked about some of them here. I'm not going to be redundant. You know, pay attention, be a good listener, surround yourself with the right people, hold yourself accountable, let others hold yourself accountable, have a good person around you, a Conciegliere, I would say, that you can run things off of and talk about and get advice from, somebody that's not a yes man or yes woman, but will stand up to you if they believe you're doing the wrong thing, so you can kick things around and arrive at a right conclusion. I think these are all important, byproducts, or products rather, or important items to be successful in business. And always have a plan. You know, Arthur, I've always had people come to me, and talk about their business. And when I start to talk to them, I find out they don't have a plan. They have an idea. An idea has to be reduced to a plan that makes sense in order for you to go forward and start your business and then be successful. So make sure you have a plan, not just an idea, because ideas have to be, again, reduced to plans that will make sense, and that will turn into a good business opportunity and eventually a good business. So I think that's about it. I think I said a lot. I talked maybe too much here today, Arthur, but thanks for giving me the forum. I appreciate it. And I hope the people that are listening have gotten something out of it. And if you want to continue with me on social media, I usually try to answer everything that comes my way. It's difficult, but I do. I do pay attention to it. It's an important platform. So hope to hear from you. And my book is available. I'm not here to sell it right now, but you can find it anywhere. Amazon, my website, all my books. So I've written a couple of them. So thank you very much again, Arthur.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Michael Franzese, for taking time out your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about the Colombo crime family and about your phenomenal book, I'll Make Your Offer You Can't Refuse. I gladly appreciate it. You are a gift from God.
Well, Arthur, thank you. And just to give, all the glory and praise to my Lord and Savior. If God didn't have a different purpose and plan for me, you can bet your life I'd either be dead or in prison for the rest of my life. And I'm thankful every day, Arthur, because I know the reality of my situation. And it's only by the grace of God that I'm here, and that whatever I was capable of doing, He allowed me to do. And my wife and my children who've been so supportive of me. I appreciate all of that. And all of those out there that have helped me get to the point that I am and continue to support me throughout. I appreciate it. And you become one of those people now by giving me this forum. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate you, Michael, and everything that you do. And I got to get you coming back on the show once again so we can get more in depth about these wealth building principles and about the power of the Colombo crime family. I really appreciate it. You conveying value to me and my audience.
Well, thank you. God bless you. And you call, I'll be there.
To everyone that's listening and watching right now, I highly recommend getting involved with the phenomenal Michael Franzese. You heard the passion that came through his voice on my show today. He actually took his passion and turned it into phenomenal profits. And look him up on the internet, Michael Franzese, Michael, Franzese, Franzese. He has phenomenal content that could take your mindset and your business and your spirituality to the next level. So to everyone that's listening and watching right now, remember that the strongest asset that each and every one of you have is your brain, and what you think about and what you take action on, that will become your reality, and your mentality creates your reality. May God bless each and every one of you, and bye for now. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Arthur. God bless.